Hey everybody, this is Aaron with Lasting Impressions Coffee. A few weeks ago, I launched my first episode in the I Know a Fighter series. This conversation is part of a broader effort to reflect the Children's Tumor Foundation's message and is the first episode in our Endurance series, which will cover a range of topics from coffee, science, and personal stories of those influenced by NF warriors. In the late 17th century, coffee houses were known as penny universities, places where, for a price of the cup of coffee, people could gather, exchange ideas, and engage in meaningful conversation. This concept is one of the reasons why I chose to start selling coffee again, a place where, for a price of coffee, anyone can come and be a part of the conversation. Coffee shops still play a pivotal role in our daily lives, but in a much different world shaped by technology, remote work, and changing social habits. So the question is, are coffee shops still a place of conversation and thought, or have they become something else? Today I'm joined by Dr. Scott Taylor Jr. from the University of South Carolina, whose work includes consumer behavior in the food industry. Together we'll explore how coffee culture has evolved and what these spaces mean today. Dr. Taylor, thank you for joining us today. You have spent time in industry and in academia. What originally pulled you into the food and beverage world?
Yeah, awesome. Aaron, thanks for having me today. Honestly, my first job in the food industry, I was 16 and I quit, no call, no showed after 30 days and said I would never work in this, and I hated it. But then when I moved to college and started living, I realized grandma wasn't there to cook for me anymore. So I started kind of cooking on my own and realized I actually had kind of a knack for it. And I wasn't as picky about food as I originally thought that I had been growing up. So that kind of got me started in the area, and I got interested in cooking myself, studied hospitality, and then eventually got a job at a local restaurant there, working as a cook and then a bartender, and kind of grew from that point on.
Kind of crazy how moving away from grandma cannot change your perspective on the world, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so recently you just hosted an event with the HRTM program. You launched a beer with a partnership with a local brewery, Steel Hands. What was that experience like?
It was an undertaking for sure. So my beverage marketing and I always get it wrong. Beverage marketing promotion class, I believe, is the correct term. We launched the brand this semester. This has been 3 semesters in the making. So last spring, the class was tasked with coming up with the name and the marketing materials and everything. Last fall, we teach a brewing class, Chef Robbie and I do, where we came up with the recipe that we really liked. And then this semester, it was plan the party, launch the brand, get the things in cans, get people excited about it, get them wanting to buy it. And so Wednesday night was a major success. I was nervous going in. About Monday morning, I was real nervous. And then Wednesday, we had quite a few ticket sales. We had a bunch of people show up buying tickets at the door. Really successful event. Had a great band there, Tomorrow's Problem, some alumni from the university. And so, I mean, really, it's a good old Columbia, South Carolina, University of South Carolina gathering. The Alumni Association was there. So, and Steel Hands' support has been phenomenal throughout this process.
Awesome. So this was a 3-part class then? Or I could join in at any point in the process if I was a student?
It was 3 different classes over 3 different semesters, basically. And so I had one student was in the very first class that developed the brand and all that, and then she was also in the class that came up with the recipe. But then this spring, the class is the same. So HCMT 350 is the same class that I teach in the spring. So last year and then this year. So she was only able to be in 2 parts, but she did show up to the party. It was great having her there. And we're hoping that she also works at Sager Park with the Fireflies. And so she's just waiting to get the beer in the park.
Oh, that would be pretty cool to go to the Fireflies game and sit in that field out there and enjoy
Absolutely.
those beers. Nice. Well, awesome. Well, let's jump into the bulk of our conversation. Historically, coffee houses were called penny universities because they were places for meaningful conversation and the exchange of ideas. Why do you think coffee shops naturally became spaces for that kind of interaction?
So there's a great book I've read a couple times, History of the World in 6 Glasses, and it does a deep dive kind of on how and why this started. And so, you know, ancient times, we had, in Socrates times, we had wine. We'd have a symposium, then we'd go have a glass of wine. We'd come back and do the symposium over again. And I think at some point people realized that maybe drinking intoxicating beverages wasn't the best way to go about doing those things, and so they started thinking about drinking coffee. And now you've got an energy drink basically that gets people excited and going. And I think conversation just kind of sparked from there. And really in, what was it, 1700s England, somewhere around there, they were, people would go to a coffee house and they, like you said, they'd have conversation. They'd talk about interesting and novel ideas. And that kind of translated over to different cultures and different countries. I think here in the States, once we kind of rebelled against tea and took coffee as our our beverage of choice, kind of had the same vibe. And for all these waves of coffee that we've talked about, when Starbucks came online, they really were that place that people would hang out. I mean, if you go back and watch reruns of Friends, right? They spend all of their time having conversation in Central Perk, right? And so there's just something about having a drink that's not potentially leading to intoxication, but is still an energetic thing and a social thing where people exchange ideas. And I think too, you find them all around college campuses. And so that certainly has a role to play there, and how people want to sit down, they want to study and get work done. And then conversation kind of sparks from that space as well.
That's a really good point. And I think you touched on it a little bit, but they have this concept for like the third place. And
Yeah.
kind of like, when you're talking about like with like friends, so like how does that concept play into the idea of like shared learning and conversation?
Absolutely. Third places, the places that aren't work, aren't home, but a place that you want to go spend time at and hang out, really does. You're going and you're seeing your friends there, and you're spending time with them, and you're talking about whatever your day is or what the day's going to be. If it's, maybe it's in the morning for coffee, or maybe it's in the afternoon for an afternoon coffee or afternoon tea, something like that. And it's really just, a communal space to gather and share ideas, talk about maybe the things that are bothering you in a given time or a given day. But I think especially, I always love the idea of spending time in a coffee shop near a college campus. There's just a different feeling and a vibe about that. And, again, that I talk to students all the time, like, oh, I'm going to this place to go study. And they all have their specific coffee shops in town that they want to go sit at and study for various things. And so it's exciting that that's kind of, rather than just a library or just the dorm room or whatever, they want to go somewhere else. And I think it's just an innate thing that coffee houses have about them.
That's interesting. So it sounds like coffee shops. It's kind of like I think a combination of that they create those environments. And is it that, or is it that I am and these students are seeking those opportunities, and it's just like coffee shops just happen to be like a great place to do it at?
That's a chicken and the egg question there. I think it's a little bit of both. I do think, again, certain coffee shops are going to be the places that people go and hang out. And so you look at coffee right now in America, you've got Starbucks and Dutch Bros, kind of 1 and 2 right now, and two very different platforms and how you get a drink to a person. And Starbucks is going back to what it was in the 80s, 90s, and wanting people to come and sit and hang out. Dutch Bros is move product out, drive through coffee, kind of a different feeling. And so I think when I think of coffee houses or I think of coffee shops, I think more traditional, sit down, grab a drink, hang out. And that in itself creates a space that people want to be in. And I do also think that college students are often looking for a place that isn't their dorm, that isn't necessarily the library or the student union. They're looking for somewhere else to go to sit down and do their work that maybe is more enjoyable, or maybe they'll run into their friends or something along those lines. And so I think there is a little bit of both. I don't know that one comes first necessarily.
So it's kind of like they have almost like two kind of like distinct roles. They want to kind of like get you on the go for like what Dutch Bros is saying, I guess, and then also the for like house kind of like I think for most people in America like view coffee. I think is like what you're saying now, for at least or for my experience is like what Dutch Bros is, and then kind of like the traditional view is what Starbucks is kind of like going to go back to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think you've got, and Starbucks is a great example, but then we just, I haven't been in there yet. I've seen it from the outside. Methodical just opened a great new space here in Columbia
yeah.
in the Wall district. And, I've got a student that I work, she's a grad student. We're working on some stuff together. And she's always like, I'm going to Methodical today to go spend 2 hours. And I'm like, it looks like a beautiful space that I would spend 2 hours in as well. Columbia is just a great coffee city. There's Drip has been around for ages, and you always see people in Drip at all hours of the day and night. Computers out doing that. Piecewise, Azalea. We just opened Godspeed, which I haven't had a chance to pop into yet either, which took over the Starbucks in 5 Points. And so I think that's always going to be something that people seek. Over in Cottontown. How can I, again, like that's going to be something that we always see from coffee shops. But then there's also this other space where sometimes people just need caffeine, right? And so like there is two roles that these operations can play, and neither one of them is wrong or right. But I think I'm a purist, I guess I would say, and so I like the idea of going and sitting down and enjoying my coffee while I'm there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it definitely enhances the experience. And do you think that the experience itself makes people perceive coffee at all, like, or the quality of it, or the experience of them being there?
I think so, and I think over the last couple of years since I teach a class on coffee, coffee, tea, and other non-alcoholic drinks, when we talk about coffee in the class, and I see it in the students, they tell me I like to go to this place for this specific thing, or I go here for this thing, and I think that's coffee shops themselves. They try to market what they want to be, and they market towards the clientele that they think they're going to get. But at the same point in time, that kind of fleshes itself out as different clientele comes in and figures out what is the thing that they want. But sitting there and thinking about it and really enjoying the coffee and seeing the different roasts and the different blends and things that different coffee shops might offer is also a very different experience. I just thought of Knowledge Perk, again, another very different shop here in town.
There's a lot of awesome coffee shops.
I mean, yeah, and they have all their different roasts and they lead you through these things. Drip uses counterculture. There's all these different brands out there and places that do a lot of really interesting things.
So I guess another interesting question down like your wheelhouse specialty, right? Or I should say, how has social media and branding changed people's like experience and how they view these brands?
That's a good one. It allows you to curate a vision online that people oftentimes are going to see first, right? Now it's a matter of where am I going to look for first? That same student I was telling you about that, usually goes to Methodical. She said she was driving to Charleston this weekend, and she's like, where should I go have coffee? And I said, well, just Google anywhere that serves counterculture. I'm a big fan of counterculture. I use them exclusively in the lab, because those shops all have a very specific kind of traditional coffee house feel, if you will. It's a sit down, it's an experience, it's hang out. And so I think online, you look at what visuals they're showing you of the layout of their shop. You get kind of a vibe from whatever they're posting or how they're posting, and if this one's going to fit your vibe or this one's going to be a better feel. And so I think social media has just allowed them to much more quickly show customers like what to experience when you pop in. I did this recently when I was in, where was that? I was in Asheville looking for where to go have coffee. And I did the same thing. I said, best coffee shop in Asheville or counterculture coffee house in Asheville. And I found one that, kind of reminded me, I guess, really of Drip, more or less. And it was just kind of, kind of hipstery vibes and kind of a cool kids coffee club. And I was like, all right, I'm going there for sure. And it was great. The coffee was fantastic. They had a couple different things that they were doing. And it was because I saw the graphics and then the pictures online. I wouldn't have gone there if I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, it's a very good suggestion, especially talking about like how Methodical Coffee just opened up. Like I didn't even know they were like a nationwide brand. Until I saw they were opening up, and then I googled them. And I was like, oh, okay, it's a nation thing. So yeah, definitely a good idea because if I'm over out west now, I can Google them and figure out where that shop is in like in Arizona if I'm in Scottsdale or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you mentioned drip a couple times. So is your personal like coffee order? Is that just a plain drip coffee, or what is it, and how has that changed over time?
Oof, yeah. I'm more of an Americano drinker than anything, but I judge it based on how busy the line is and what kind of how they make their coffee and how. So if I go to Drip in Five Points, I used to go to Drip when it was open on Main Street when I lived here a number of years ago, and I would order specific roasts based on how I was feeling, and they do the pour over method and everything. But typically, I'm an Americano drinker. I like a flavor, and just knowing that I'm getting a little bit more water. I guess a little bit better for my stomach at the end of the day. Otherwise, I'll just keep drinking cup. Usually an Americano means I'm getting one, whereas you get a cup, they might keep refilling it, and that gets me in trouble.
I do the French press, so I drink anywhere from
Yeah.
like 4 to 6 cups a day.
I'm there with you, because we at home we have a drip machine, but I've got the French press. Sometimes on the weekends I'll bust that out.
I love it. Yeah, so if there could be anybody in history, if you could go get a cup of coffee with them, you could be present day or past, right? Who would you pick?
There's two people on my list. They're my two favorite athletes of all time. One passed before I was even born. That's Steve Prefontaine. And the other one, Kobe Bryant. Just kind of two people that I've always kind of idolized or looked up to as just their work ethic, their mentalities of competition, and turning, you know, different aspects of life, and really kind of going after what they wanted to do, and not backing down from it. Steve Prefontaine at the time was battling. I'll call the NCAA a bully at that point in time. They wouldn't let people get paid, or wear. He couldn't wear Nikes, and make money to go compete in the Olympics as well. It wasn't just NCAA; it was the Olympics. And he kind of took that on, and that changed the game for so many people. And I've never been a fan of bullies or people just creating roadblocks for no good reason. And I've always kind of looked up to that. And he's just one of those consummate competitors. And just the mindset was always just intriguing to me. Kobe Bryant, same thing, right? One of the most competitive, just intense people when he was going after the thing that he wanted to go after. But then also there was such a thoughtful side, such a calculated, understanding, side that people didn't know about until after he left basketball. And it's just two very interesting people that I think would love to just kind of pick their brains on how they attacked their work, and how they went after their goals. Because there's sometimes that academia is by no stretch of the imagination a sport, but there requires a certain level of persistence and dedication, and work hard that I always relate to sports and athletics. Going through the tenure and promotion process is very much like running a marathon, or playing an 82 game season. And so those are two guys I've always thought would be amazing to sit down. I don't know if either one of them drank coffee. I really don't. They probably didn't need it, like I do, but I think they'd be really cool people to have conversation with.
I think I remember hearing stories about like Kobe Bryant like at the gym like at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I would be surprised if he didn't need a cup of coffee at some point during the day. But that's definitely good advice to bring the Mamba mentality into your academia. I think that's
Absolutely.
definitely good advice. Nice. Well, awesome. Well, if early coffee houses were penny universities, quote unquote, right, built on the idea that kind of conversation itself could educate and connect people, I think it's clear that the idea still holds true today. Whether it's someone learning about a condition like neurofibromatosis for the first time, or simply engaging in thoughtful conversations, spaces like coffee shops continue to offer something deeper than what's on the menu. They create opportunities for awareness, understanding, and connection. Dr. Scott Taylor Jr., thank you for your time today and your insight. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like to do more, I'll link CTF's website below. And if you want to support my venture, you can order some coffee from my website. And Dr. Taylor, if people wanted to read more about your work, if I posted your university link, would that be the best way for them to access that?
Absolutely, yeah. You can
Okay.
check out the School of HTMT. We got a couple links in there to institutes that I work with, share research, and my contact information is there as well.
So yeah, so I'll link that so people can read about everything you've done, and the stuff also about the with partnership with Steel Hands that the university did as well. Yeah, so yeah, thank you all, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks again, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you.